Imagine this for a moment: you reach into your pocket, pull out a handful of loose change, and without thinking, you toss it onto the table. Pennies, nickels, maybe a dime or two. Nothing unusual. Nothing exciting. Not rare gold. Not some ancient treasure buried underground. Just a simple copper penny, hiding in plain sight. People have actually spent this coin. Passed it along. Dropped it into tip jars. Let it disappear into circulation, completely unaware that they were holding a life-changing fortune in their hands. This is the story of the 1969 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, and why collectors across the United States are still searching for it today, because somewhere out there, this coin still exists. Waiting to be discovered. Back in 1969, America was in the middle of one of the most transformative eras in its history. The moon landing was about to happen. The country was changing fast. And at the US Mint, billions of pennies were being produced for everyday use. Nothing about these coins seemed unusual at first. They were standard Lincoln cents. Same design. Same weight. Same purpose, but behind the scenes, something went wrong. During the minting process, a small number of pennies were struck with a dramatic and highly unusual error. Not just a minor flaw. Not a tiny imperfection. But a bold, unmistakable doubling effect that would later shock the coin collecting world. At the time, no one noticed. These coins slipped quietly into circulation, blending in with millions of ordinary pennies. They passed through cash registers, piggy banks, and pockets, completely unnoticed. Years later, when collectors finally discovered them, the reaction was immediate: disbelief, because this wasn't just any error, this was one of the most famous and valuable error coins ever created. Now here's where the story gets even more mysterious. When the first example surfaced, experts were so stunned by the dramatic doubling that they initially believed the coins were counterfeit. In fact, the Secret Service got involved, thinking these pennies might be fake. Think about that for a second. A 1-cent coin, investigated by federal authorities. That's how unusual it was, but after careful examination, the truth became clear. These coins were real. They had been struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which is why they carry no mint mark. And the doubling was the result of a rare mistake during the die creation process. From that moment on, the 1969 no mint mark double die penny became legendary. Collectors began hunting for it. Dealers started offering massive sums of money. And over time, its value climbed higher and higher, reaching into the realm of $1 million territory. Today, in top condition, this coin has been valued at up to $1.9 million. 1 penny, worth nearly $2 million. Most people who come across this coin don't recognize it, they overlook it. They ignore it. They spend it, and that's exactly why it continues to surface in the most unexpected places. So let's slow down and break it down carefully. The first thing you need to look at is the date. It must say 1969. Not 1968. Not 1970. Exactly 1969. Next, check for a mint mark. You're looking for no mint mark at all. That means the coin was struck in Philadelphia. If you see a D or an S under the date, it's not the one you're searching for. But here's where things get interesting. The real key to identifying this coin is the doubling, and this isn't the kind of doubling you need a microscope to see that it's bold. It's obvious. It practically jumps out at you. Look closely at the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" on the front of the coin. On the rare double die version, these letters appear duplicated, almost like a shadow or echo. The doubling is strong and clear, especially on the date and lettering. If you tilt the coin under light, you'll notice that the numbers in 1969 look thicker, almost like they were stamped twice, slightly out of alignment. That's the signature of this error, and it's what makes the coin so incredibly valuable. But here's the part that keeps collectors awake at night. There are other 1969 pennies out there with minor doubling. Common ones. Worth only a few dollars. The difference between those, and the one worth $1 million, comes down to the strength and clarity of the doubling. The real one is dramatic. Bold. Impossible to ignore once you know what to look for, and that's why knowledge is everything, because without it, you might miss the opportunity of a lifetime. Imagine going through a jar of old coins. You pick up a 1969 penny. You glance at it quickly. It looks normal. Nothing stands out that so you toss it aside. What you didn't realize is that in that split second, you may have just overlooked a coin worth more than most people earn in decades. That's the reality of this hunt. It's not about digging deep underground or traveling across the world. It's about paying attention, because these coins are still out there. They're in circulation. They're in drawers. They're in forgotten collections passed down through generations, and every once in a while, someone finds one. Regular people, not experts. Not professionals. Just ordinary individuals who took a closer look at their change, and suddenly, everything changed. There are stories of collectors who spent years searching without success. And then there are stories of people who found one by pure chance. A penny in a coffee shop. A coin from a vending machine. A handful of change from a grocery store. That's what makes this so powerful. This isn't just a collector's item. It's a possibility. A real, tangible chance that something extraordinary could already be in your possession. So the next time you come across a penny, don't ignore it. Take a moment. Look at the date, check for the mint mark, examine the lettering, because hidden within that small, copper surface, could be a story worth telling for the rest of your life. And remember, the 1969 no mint mark double die penny isn't just rare. It's legendary. It's one of those coins that transformed the hobby of coin collecting. A coin that proved even the smallest mistake can create something incredibly valuable. A coin that turned a single cent into nearly 2 million. And here's the truth most people don't realize: the hunt is still ongoing. Collectors haven't found them all, not even close, which means the door is still open, the opportunity is still there. And yet, in the right condition, with the right hidden detail, that ordinary 1990 D Lincoln penny could be worth a life-altering fortune, even approaching $1 million. Across America, people have discovered rare coins in the most ordinary places. A jar in the kitchen. A forgotten drawer. A handful of loose change from a gas station. Coins that looked completely normal, until someone noticed something just slightly off. And that tiny difference turned into thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, and in extreme cases, whispers of values nearing $1 million. Now here's where it gets interesting. The 1990 D Lincoln penny was minted in Denver, part of billions produced that year. At first glance, it's one of the most common coins you'll ever see. Nothing flashy. Nothing special. Abraham Lincoln's familiar face on the front. The Lincoln Memorial on the back. A small, D, mint mark just beneath the date, but hidden within this massive production. Something went wrong, and when something goes wrong at a mint, collectors pay attention, because mistakes are where the money is. In 1990, the U.S. Mint was operating at high speed, producing coins in enormous quantities. Machines striking coins non-stop. Dies wearing down. Human oversight stretched thin. And under those conditions, errors can slip through, small, nearly invisible differences that most people would never notice, but collectors do, and when they find one, the value can explode. Now picture this: a worker feeds blanks into a press. The die comes down with immense force, stamping the design into the coin. Again and again. Thousands of times per hour. But over time, the die begins to degrade. Tiny cracks form. Letters lose sharpness. Sometimes, another die is accidentally used, one not meant for that specific coin, and suddenly, you don't just have a penny anymore, you have a mistake, and mistakes are rare. Here's where your attention matters, because this is the moment most people miss. There are a few specific variations of the 1990 D Lincoln penny that have caught the attention of serious collectors. Coins that, under the right conditions, have sold for thousands, even tens of thousands. And when you combine extreme rarity with perfect condition, that's when the conversation starts approaching $1 million. First, check the date and mint mark carefully. You're looking for 1990 with a small D underneath. That D tells you it was minted in Denver. But don't just glance at it. Look closely. Use a magnifying glass if you have one. Because one of the most valuable signs is doubling. Doubling happens when the coin is struck slightly off alignment, causing the design to appear duplicated. It can be subtle, a faint shadow around the numbers or letters. Or it can be bold and obvious. Look at the word liberty. Look at "In God We Trust." Look at the numbers in the date. If you see any kind of doubling, even slight, you may be holding something extremely special. Now pause for a second, because this is where most people would have already missed it, they would have spent that penny without a second thought, but not you. Now there's another detail you need to check, the mint mark itself. On some rare coins, the mint mark appears slightly misaligned. Maybe it's tilted. Maybe it's positioned differently than usual. Maybe it looks thicker or thinner than normal. These tiny inconsistencies can signal that something unusual happened during production, and unusual means valuable, but we're not done yet, because condition is everything. You could have the rarest variation in the world, but if it's worn down, scratched, or damaged, the value drops dramatically. The coins that reach the highest values, the ones that spark headlines and make collectors dream, are in near perfect condition. That we're talking about coins that look almost untouched, sharp details. Clean surfaces. No major scratches. A bright, original shine. Collectors call this mint state. And when a rare error coin exists in mint state, that's when the value can skyrocket. That's when people start talking about six figures and beyond. Now imagine this scenario: that you're sitting at home, maybe watching TV, maybe going through old belongings. You find a jar filled with pennies collected over years, maybe decades. You start sorting through them casually, not expecting anything. Then you notice one, a 1990 penny. You almost ignore it, almost toss it aside, but something catches your eye. The date looks different. You lean in closer. There's doubling. Your heart starts to race, because now you know, this isn't just any penny, this could be the one. And this is the moment that changes everything. But here's the truth most people don't realize: coins like this are still out there. They haven't all been found. They haven't all been collected. Many are still circulating quietly, passing from hand to hand, unnoticed, because most people don't know what to look for. They don't know the signs. They don't know that a single penny could be worth more than a house, and that's exactly why opportunities like this still exist. Now take a breath, because I want you to think about your own life for a second. This is not just about money. It's about awareness. It's about understanding that hidden value exists in places most people overlook, and sometimes life-changing discoveries come from the simplest things. Now let's sharpen your eye even more. When you examine a 1990 penny, tilt it under light. Rotate it slowly. Look for unusual reflections. Errors often reveal themselves when light hits the surface at different angles. Pay attention to texture. Trust your instincts that if something looks different, it probably is. And remember this, even experts don't always agree at first glance. Some coins need to be professionally graded to confirm their true value. So if you ever find a coin that looks promising, don't rush, protect it. Store it safely. Have it evaluated by a professional grading service, because one small mistake could mean the difference between a regular penny and a fortune. And yes, it sounds unbelievable. A penny, worth $1 million, but that's the power of rarity. That's the power of error. That's the power of being the one person who notices what everyone else ignores. Now imagine telling that story. Imagine explaining how you found it. Not in a treasure chest. Not in a vault, but in your own home. A simple coin, hiding in plain sight, and suddenly, everything changes: your perspective, your future, your possibilities. Because sometimes, life doesn't announce its biggest opportunities, sometimes, it hides them. In the smallest, most ordinary places, and all it takes is one careful look. So the next time you see a penny, don't dismiss it. Don't ignore it, because that small, copper coin in your hand might not be ordinary at all. It might be rare. It might be valuable. It might be the discovery of a lifetime. Right now, somewhere in America, someone is unknowingly holding a 1972 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin so ordinary on the surface, yet hiding a secret so rare, it has stunned collectors and shaken the coin world. And here's the part that should stop you cold: this coin doesn't look special at first glance. An gold shine. No commemorative design. No obvious marking screaming value, just a simple 1972 Lincoln penny, the kind you've seen your entire life, which means, you could already have one. Or worse, you may have spent one without ever realizing what it was, because hidden among millions of ordinary pennies, there exists a version so rare, so valuable, that in pristine condition, collectors have placed values reaching into the realm of $1 million. But to understand why, we need to go back to 1972. A year of change, tension, and transformation in America. The Vietnam War was still shaping headlines. The economy was shifting. And inside the US Mint, something unusual was happening. Coins were being struck at an incredible pace. Billions of Lincoln cents were produced that year, most of them in Philadelphia, which, at the time, did not use a mint mark. That alone is completely normal, but buried within that massive production, something went wrong, and that mistake is where the story turns from ordinary to extraordinary. You see, during the minting process, coins are struck using metal dies. These dies carry the design of the coin, every letter, every number, every detail, but sometimes, those dies are imperfect, sometimes, they shift, misalign, or get duplicated in a way that creates a doubling effect, and in 1972, one of the most famous and dramatic errors in US coin history was born, the 1972 double die obverse at first. It might not sound like much. But when collectors discovered it, they couldn't believe their eyes. The date, the word liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," all showed. Clear, bold doubling, not a blur. Not a shadow, but a distinct, separate impression, as if the coin had been struck twice, slightly off from the original. And here's where things get even more interesting. This error didn't happen to just one coin. That a small batch entered circulation, they were spent. Lost. Forgotten, mixed in with billions of ordinary pennies, quietly waiting to be discovered. Years passed, decades, even, and then, one surfaced that a collector noticed something strange about the lettering. That he looked closer, then closer still, and what he saw changed everything. The doubling was unmistakable, the coin wasn't damaged, it wasn't worn, it wasn't altered. That it was a genuine mint error. And when it was authenticated, the value skyrocketed. Suddenly, people began checking their change, searching jars, digging through drawers, opening old piggy banks that hadn't been touched in years, because if one existed. Now here's what makes this story even more powerful. Most people don't know what to look for. They assume valuable coins are obvious, shiny, rare-looking, but the truth is, the most valuable coins often hide behind familiarity, and the 1972 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is the perfect example. First, you check the date. That's your starting point. Next, look under the date. That if there is no mint mark, you're on the right track. Remember, Philadelphia didn't use a mint mark back then, so this is normal, but now comes the critical step. You need to examine the front of the coin, the obverse, very carefully. Focus on the word liberty, not just thickness, but actual separation in the letters. Look at the date. 1-9-7-2. Then check "In God We Trust." This is where the doubling is often most dramatic. That if you see strong, distinct doubling across these areas, you may be holding something extraordinary. And here's the key detail most people miss. There are multiple types of 1972 double dies, but only one, known as the Type 1 or FS 101. Is the highly valuable version collectors chase. This is the one with the strongest, most obvious doubling, the kind you can sometimes see with the naked eye, though a magnifying glass makes it much easier. We're talking about doubling so clear, it almost looks like a shadow has been carved into the metal. That's the moment your heart should start racing, because coins like this, in top condition, have sold for staggering amounts. Not just thousands, not just hundreds of thousands, but pushing toward that life-changing number. $1 million, a single penny, worth more than most homes. And it gets even more intense, because condition matters. A worn example might still be worth thousands. That's where the magic happens. That's where collectors compete. That's where auction prices explode. Now imagine this, an old jar of coins sitting on a shelf, dust covering the lid, inside, dozens, maybe hundreds of pennies collected over decades. To most people, it's just spare change, but to someone who knows what to look for, it's a treasure chest. And somewhere in that pile, there could be a 1972 double die, silently waiting to be recognized. This is why stories like this continue to captivate collectors, because it's not just about money. It's about discovery. It's about the idea that something incredibly valuable could be hiding in plain sight. No metal detector required. No deep sea diving, just your eyes, your patience, and a little knowledge. And every time you check a penny, there's a moment of possibility. A moment where everything could change. Now let's reset for a second, take a breath, and think about how many pennies you've handled in your lifetime. Probably none. That assumption is exactly why these coins continue to slip through unnoticed, and it's exactly why someone, somewhere, is going to find one next. The question is, because now, you know what to look for, you know the year, you know the missing mint mark is normal, you know the doubling is the key, and you know that the difference between an ordinary penny and $1 million coin comes down to tiny details most people never even consider. That's the edge. That's the secret, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Suddenly, every penny becomes a question, every coin becomes a possibility, and every handful of change feels like a hidden opportunity. This is where casual observers become collectors, where curiosity turns into obsession, where a simple habit, checking your coins, can lead to something extraordinary. But here's one more thing you need to understand: not all doubling is valuable. There are machine doubling effects that can trick beginners. These usually look flat, smeared, or shelf-like. They lack the sharp, separated appearance of a true double die. The real 1972 double die has depth, clarity, precision. It looks intentional, even though it's a mistake, and that's what makes it so valuable. It's not damaged. It's history, captured in metal. A moment where the minting process slipped and created something unique, something never meant to exist, and yet, here it is. Still circulating, still being found, still changing lives, because when one of these coins appears at auction, the energy is electric. Collectors lean in, bidders compete, prices climb, and suddenly, that tiny piece of copper becomes the center of attention. A spotlight shining on something that most people would have overlooked. That's the power of knowledge. That's the difference between spending a coin and saving it, between ignoring it and recognizing it, between losing a fortune and discovering one. So the next time you hear that familiar clink, don't ignore it. Pause, look closer, turn the coin in your hand, check the date, examine the letters, because hidden in that moment could be something incredible, something rare, something valuable beyond imagination. A simple 1972 Lincoln penny, with no mint mark, and a secret that only a few people in the world truly understand. And now, you're one of them. So check your pockets, check your jars, check that old collection you haven't touched in years. Because history has a strange way of hiding in the most ordinary places, and sometimes, the smallest things carry the greatest value. But for a small number of collectors across the United States, it's very real, because hidden among billions of ordinary coins, there are a few rare 2015 Lincoln pennies that are anything but ordinary, and today, you're going to learn exactly how to spot one. Not just the basics, but the subtle, almost invisible clues that could turn pocket change into a life-changing discovery. So before you spend another penny, before you toss one into a jar or leave it on a counter, you might want to listen carefully, because this story starts in a place you'd never expect. Back in 2015, the Denver Mint was producing millions upon millions of Lincoln pennies. These coins were routine, predictable, mass-produced with speed and precision. Nothing about them was supposed to be special. They were just another year in a long line of Lincoln cents, coins that most people ignore every single day. But something went wrong, and in the world of coin collecting, something went wrong is exactly where the magic begins. Deep inside the minting process, a small number of dies, the hardened steel tools used to stamp the coin design, began to deteriorate and misalign in ways that weren't immediately caught. At first, no one noticed. Coins continued to roll off the presses. Thousands, then millions, entering circulation across the country, but hidden within that flood of ordinary coins, a handful carried rare minting errors so unusual, so precise, that collectors would later fight over them. Now here's where it gets interesting. Most people think valuable coins are old, ancient, something passed down through generations, but the truth is, some of the most valuable coins in existence are modern. And the 2015 Lincoln penny is proof of that, because under the right conditions, with the right combination of errors, this seemingly common coin can reach values that most people would never believe. We're talking 5 figures, 6 figures, even approaching $1 million in the most extreme, pristine cases. It comes down to 3 things: rarity, condition, and most importantly, errors. Now I want you to imagine holding a 2015 penny in your hand. At first glance, it looks completely normal. On the front, you'll see Abraham Lincoln's portrait, just like every modern penny. Above him, the word liberty. To the right, the year 2015. And just below the date, a tiny letter, D. That D stands for Denver, the mint where the coin was produced, and that small letter could be the first clue. But not every 2015 penny is valuable. In fact, most are worth exactly 1 cent. You have to look closer, much closer. The first thing you want to check is the strike quality. rare versions of the 2015 D penny show what collectors call a double die error. This means the design was stamped more than once, slightly offset, creating a faint but visible doubling effect. Look closely at the letters, especially Liberty. If you see slight shadows, or a doubling of the edges, that's not damaged up, that's a minting error, and that's exactly what collectors are searching for. Now here's the part most people miss: the doubling can be extremely subtle. Sometimes you won't notice it unless you tilt the coin under light. Or use a magnifying glass, but if it's there, it changes everything, because a genuine double die error dramatically increases the coin's rarity. And rarity is what drives value, but we're not done yet. The next thing to examine is the surface. Some of the most valuable 2015 D pennies were struck on improperly prepared planchets. That means the metal blank used to create the coin had flaws before it was even stamped. This can result in unusual textures, faint lines, or even missing details in certain areas. To the average person, it might look like damage, but to a trained collector, it's a sign of something rare, something special. And then, there's the most powerful factor of all: condition. You could have the rarest error in the world, but if the coin is worn down, scratched, or heavily circulated, its value drops dramatically. The coins that reach extraordinary prices, the ones that approach or exceed $1 million, are in near perfect condition, crisp details, sharp edges, no visible wear. These are coins that somehow escaped heavy use, coins that were set aside, protected, preserved, sometimes by accident, sometimes by someone who had no idea what they were holding. And that's what makes this story so fascinating, because these coins didn't start in museums, they didn't come from treasure chests, they came from everyday circulation, grocery stores, gas stations, pocket change, which means, even today, there's still a chance, that a small chance, but a real one, that one of these coins is sitting somewhere unnoticed, probably none. And that's exactly why coins like this slip through the cracks, because no one is looking. But now, so let's go deeper. When you pick up a 2015 D penny, start with the date and mint mark. Confirm it says 2015 and has the D beneath it. Next, check the lettering. Look closely at "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." Search for any signs of doubling, even the slightest distortion can matter. Then examine Lincoln's face, pay attention to the edges of his profile. Do you see any unusual thickness, or slight duplication? That's another potential indicator. After that, rotate the coin under light, watch how the surface reflects. Don't ignore it, because sometimes, the smallest detail makes the biggest difference. And here's something most people don't realize: even if your coin isn't perfect, it could still be valuable. Error coins exist on a spectrum. Some are minor, worth a few dollars; others are extreme, worth thousands; and a very rare few, under the right conditions, can reach life-changing amounts, amounts that people dream about, amounts that make headlines, amounts that turn an ordinary day into a moment you never forget. Now imagine this: that you're sitting at your kitchen table. There's a jar of coins in front of you. You start sorting through them, one by one. Most are nothing special, just loose change. But then, you see a 2015 D penny. You almost skip past it, but something tells you to look closer. You tilt it under the light, and suddenly, you notice something strange. The letters don't look quite right. There's a faint doubling. Your heart starts to race. You grab a magnifying glass, you look again, and this time, there's no doubt that you're holding something rare, something most people would never even recognize. That moment, that realization, that's what every collector lives for, because in that instant, everything changes. And whether it sells for thousands, or climbs toward $1 million, it all started with a single decision. To look closer. To pay attention. To not overlook something small, because sometimes, the smallest things carry the greatest value, and that's the secret most people never learn, not because it's hidden, but because it's ignored. So the next time you see a penny, don't dismiss it. Don't assume it's worthless. Take a second, look at the date, check the mint mark, examine the details, because you never know what you might find. And somewhere out there, in a drawer, a jar, or even your own pocket, there could be a 2015 D Lincoln penny with the right combination of errors, the right condition, the right story, waiting to be discovered, waiting to change someone's life. And that someone. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a single penny, and discovering it's worth more than a luxury mansion, more than a lifetime of savings, more than $1 million. It sounds impossible, but what if I told you that a rare 1994 D Lincoln penny has stunned collectors, sparked quiet bidding wars, and in extraordinary condition, has been valued at up to $1.3 million. It doesn't look special at first glance. No gold shine. No oversized shape. No obvious mistake screaming for attention, just a simple copper coin, quietly hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone who knows exactly what to look for, because most people don't, and that's why treasures like this slip through hands every single day. The story of the 1994 D Lincoln penny begins in a place that produces billions of coins, the Denver Mint. In 1994, millions upon millions of pennies were struck. They were released into circulation without ceremony, without headlines, without anyone suspecting that a few of them were anything special. To the average American, they were just pennies, pocket change, coins to toss into jars, or leave behind at gas stations, but inside that massive production run, something unusual happened. A small number of coins were struck with subtle but powerful characteristics, the kind that only trained eyes, or lucky collectors, would ever notice, and over time, those few coins began to separate themselves from the ordinary. Collectors started whispering about them, dealers began paying closer attention, and slowly, quietly, the value of these rare 1994 D pennies began to climb, not hundreds of dollars, not thousands, but into territory that most people would never associate with a 1-cent coin. Now here's where things get even more interesting. Because the value of a 1994 D Lincoln penny doesn't come from just one factor. It's a perfect storm: condition, strike quality, surface preservation, and in some cases, rare minting anomalies that make a specific coin one of a kind. And when all of those elements align perfectly, you don't just have a collectible, you have a legend. Imagine a coin so flawless, so perfectly preserved, that it looks like it was minted yesterday. No scratches. No dullness. No signs of wear. This is what collectors call a near-perfect or mint state coin, and at the highest levels, graded MS 68 or above, these coins become almost mythical. Only a handful exist in that condition. Serious collectors don't hesitate, they compete, because they know opportunities like that don't come twice. Now pause for a second, because this is where your attention matters. That's the reality, because unless you know exactly what to look for, this $1 million opportunity looks just like every other penny. So let's slow down, and uncover the details that could change everything for you. First, the date. You're looking for 1994. Not 1993. Not 1995. It's printed clearly on the front of the coin, just beneath Abraham Lincoln's portrait. Next, the mint mark. This is critical. Look closely under the date, and you should see a small letter, D. That D stands for Denver, and it's the first sign you might be holding something special. But don't get too excited just yet, because millions of 1994 D pennies exist. What separates the ordinary from the extraordinary is what comes next: condition. Take a close look at the surface of the coin. Here's the truth most people don't realize: condition can mean the difference between 1 cent and thousands of dollars, and in rare cases, hundreds of thousands, or even $1 million. Now let's go deeper, because some of the most valuable 1994 D pennies are known for their exceptional strike quality. This means the details on the coin are sharp, crisp, and fully defined. Look at Lincoln's hair, check the lettering. Are the words bold and clear, or slightly faded? These small details matter more than you can imagine. Collectors pay enormous premiums for coins that were struck with precision, and when that precision combines with flawless preservation, that's when values skyrocket. But there's another layer to this mystery, point one that most casual collectors completely overlook, and it could be sitting right in your pocket: minting anomalies. Now, not every valuable 1994 D penny has an obvious error, but some do. And those errors can turn an already valuable coin into something truly extraordinary. We're talking about subtle variations, tiny differences in alignment, slight doubling in the letters or numbers, unusual surfaces that hint at something different during the minting process. These are the kinds of details that experts search for, the kinds of details that can multiply a coin's value overnight. And here's the part that should make you stop and think: most people never check, they assume all pennies are the same. They assume nothing valuable could possibly be hiding in something so common, but history has proven, again and again, that assumption is wrong. Take a moment and imagine this: that you're cleaning out an old drawer, you find a handful of coins, pennies you've ignored for years, you almost toss them aside, but something makes you pause. you take a closer look, you notice the date, you see the small d, and then, you realize the coin looks different, brighter, sharper, almost untouched by time. Your heart starts to race. It sounds like a dream, but for a small number of people, it's already happened. Coins like these don't announce themselves, they don't come with labels or warnings, they sit quietly, blending in, waiting for someone with curiosity, patience, and just a little bit of luck. And that's what makes this story so powerful, because this isn't about rare artifacts locked in museums, this is about everyday objects, coins that move through millions of hands, coins that get spent, dropped, forgotten, and yet, a few of them carry unimaginable value. Now here's another moment to reset your focus, because what you do next could change everything. That if you have a jar of coins at home, don't ignore it. That if you receive change at a store, don't spend it blindly, start looking, start paying attention, because once you know what to search for, you see things differently, you begin to notice details others miss, you begin to recognize potential where others see nothing, and that's how discoveries are made. Not by experts in labs, but by ordinary people, who decided to take a second look. And let's be honest, the idea of finding a coin worth $1 million, hiding in plain sight, is something most people never even consider, but now you know, now you understand that the possibility exists, that somewhere out there, right now, in 1994, the Lincoln penny of extraordinary quality, extraordinary rarity, could be sitting unnoticed, maybe in a cash register, maybe in a coin jar. Maybe even in your own home, and all it takes is one moment of awareness. Point 1 Careful look. Point 1 Decision not to ignore the smallest details, because sometimes, the smallest things carry the greatest value, and sometimes, the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is simply knowing what to look for. So the next time you see a penny, don't dismiss it, hold it, examine it, look for the date, the mint mark, the shine, the sharpness, because hidden within those tiny details could be a life-changing discovery. A story you'll tell for the rest of your life. A moment where everything changed, because you chose to look closer. And if you ever find that perfect 1994 D penny, the kind collectors dream about, you won't just be holding a coin, that you'll be holding history, that you'll be holding possibility, that you'll be holding something that proves treasure doesn't always look like treasure. It feels like something that only happens to other people. But hidden among billions of everyday coins, there are rare moments, tiny minting accidents, microscopic details, that can transform a 1-cent coin into a life-changing treasure. And today, we're diving into one of the most overlooked, misunderstood, and potentially valuable coins still circulating today, the 1991 D Lincoln penny. At first glance, it's nothing special. You've seen it before. You've probably spent it without a second thought. But what if I told you that a rare variation of this coin has been whispered about in collector circles, chased by experts, and valued at up to $1.6 million in pristine condition? Yes, a single penny. It might still be out there, hiding in plain sight. Let's go back for a moment. The year was 1991. America was changing fast. The Cold War had just ended. Technology was beginning to reshape the world. And at the Denver Mint, billions of Lincoln pennies were being struck, fast, efficient, routine. Nothing about that process was supposed to create history, but sometimes, history doesn't announce itself, sometimes, it slips quietly into circulation. Somewhere in that flood of copper-plated zinc coins, something went wrong. Or maybe, something went perfectly right, because among those millions of coins, a handful were struck with unusual characteristics, tiny differences that only the sharpest eyes could catch, differences that would later send shockwaves through the collecting world. Now pause for a second, imagine holding a jar of pennies. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. You shake them, hear that familiar metallic sound. To most people, it's just loose change, but to someone who knows what to look for, it's a treasure chest, because hidden inside could be a 1991 D penny that doesn't behave like the others. And that's where the real story begins. Collectors started noticing something strange. Certain 1991 D pennies showed anomalies, subtle, almost invisible errors that hinted at minting irregularities. We're talking about double details, unusual spacing, faint but distinct distortions in the lettering, and even rare die errors that only appear under magnification. These aren't mistakes you notice in a glance, these are secrets pressed into metal, and once discovered, they can change everything. Now here's where your attention matters, because I'm about to show you exactly how to identify one of these rare coins. First, you need to look at the date that's your starting point. Then, just below the year, you'll see a small letter, the D mint mark. That means it was produced at the Denver Mint.NOD. Then it's not the one we're focusing on today, but if you see that D, now things get interesting. Next, focus on the word liberty. This is where some of the most valuable variations begin to reveal themselves. On rare examples, the letters may appear slightly doubled. Not dramatically. Not cartoonishly obvious, but subtly, almost like a shadow. A second impression that's what collectors call doubling, and in the right form, it can multiply the coin's value beyond imagination. Now shift your attention to, In God We Trust. Look closely at each letter. Are the edges sharp, or do they seem slightly blurred, stretched, or doubled? These tiny inconsistencies can signal a rare die variety, and here's the key detail most people miss, the spacing. Yes, spacing. On some valuable 1991 D pennies, the spacing between letters or numbers appears just slightly off. Not enough to catch casual attention, but enough to stand out under careful inspection. That's your clue, that's your signal, and that's what separates a 1-cent coin from something worth thousands, or even $1 million. Now imagine this: that you're sitting at your kitchen table. A small pile of coins in front of you. Maybe you're bored. Maybe you're curious. You pick up a penny, you turn it. There's the D. Your heart beats a little faster. You grab a magnifying glass, or your phone camera, zoom in, and suddenly, you see it. A faint doubling. A subtle shift. A detail that shouldn't be there, but is. That's the moment everything changes, because collectors have paid staggering amounts for coins just like that. Coins that most people ignored, coins that slipped through the cracks, coins that sat in drawers for decades, waiting to be discovered. And this is where it becomes more than just a coin. It becomes a possibility. A reminder that value doesn't always look valuable, that sometimes, the most ordinary things hide extraordinary secrets. Now let's go deeper. Condition matters. A lot. Even a rare 1991 D penny won't reach its full potential unless it's in exceptional shape. We're talking about coins that look almost untouched. No heavy scratches. No major discoloration. Strong, clear details. Collectors call this mint state. And when a rare error meets mint condition, that's when prices explode. That's when auctions turn heads. That's when a single penny can cross into the realm of $1 million. One coin. One moment of discovery. One life-changing outcome. But here's the twist: most people never look, they don't check their coins, they don't slow down long enough to notice the details, and because of that, treasures remain hidden. Right under their noses, right inside their homes, right now. So let me ask you something: not glanced at it, not counted it, but studied it, examined it, questioned it, because the difference between someone who finds $1 million coin, and someone who spends it on coffee, is attention. That's it, attention. Now imagine going through your old piggy bank. Or that jar sitting on a shelf. Or the coins tucked away in a drawer you haven't opened in years. Every single penny becomes a question, every single one becomes a possibility, and somewhere in that pile, there could be a 1991 D penny waiting to be recognized, waiting to be understood, waiting to be valued. Now here's another detail that could change everything: weight. Most 1991 pennies are made of copper-plated zinc and weigh about 2.5 grams, but if you ever come across one that feels slightly off, heavier, or lighter, that's a signal. A reason to investigate further, because unusual weight can indicate a rare planchet error, a coin struck on the wrong metal. Those can command incredible prices. We're talking thousands, tens of thousands, even approaching that $1 million territory under the right conditions. So now you have multiple clues: the date, the mint mark, the lettering, the spacing, the weight. Each one is a piece of the puzzle. Each one brings you closer to the truth, and the truth is simple: this isn't just about coins. It's about awareness. It's about recognizing opportunity when it appears in the most unexpected form. Because history has shown us something again and again: the greatest discoveries aren't always buried deep underground, sometimes, they're already in your hands. Think about the people who have found rare coins before. They weren't always experts, they weren't always collectors, sometimes, they were just curious. Curious enough to look closer, and that question, that single moment of curiosity, has led to discoveries worth life-changing amounts of money. Now imagine your own story. Imagine being the person who almost ignored it, but didn't, the person who almost spent it, but checked, the person who turned a single penny into a story that people talk about for years, because that's what this is. A story waiting to happen, and you're standing right at the beginning of it. So here's what you do next: you start small. You gather your coins, you take your time, you look closely, you compare, you question, and most importantly, you don't assume anything is worthless, because the moment you assume, is the moment you miss it. And out there, right now, there are still 1991 pennies circulating, still being passed from hand to hand, still being overlooked, still being underestimated, but not forever, because sooner or later, someone notices, someone pays attention. Someone discovers the detail that changes everything, and that someone could be you.